Hello, hello, and welcome to the Weeder Life podcast. I'm your host, Erica Weederlight, and I am the CEO and founder of We the Light. I help humans who feel inadequate, broken, self-conscious, and shamed around their sexuality to reclaim their aliveness, their power, and to have a renewed relationship to pleasure while preparing themselves to feel hella confident to date others and themselves. AKA, I'm guiding people to live their #best lives. I have to give you a fair warning. I do unfortunately swear like a drunken sailor, so if you do have little ones by you, just be sure to pop in some earbuds. Alright friends, let's buckle up and let's rock it to this week's episode. Hello, everyone. I am so fucking personally stoked to have this amazing guest on today. I can't wait to harass her with questions. This human is the best. You have to stalk her Instagram, potentially simultaneously. Just the best human all around. Has so much knowledge, is just a wealth, and really embodies the work. We'll talk about all the things. But my amazing guest today is my guest expert, Amber Leitz. She's fucking phenomenal. I just have to read you her Instagram bio because it's pretty poppin'. So Amber is a 6-figure erotic blueprint coach for women leaders who want to fully embody their next sex, wealth, and power level. More orgasms, luxury, and cash. I'm sorry, I've simply passed away. I've actually passed just from the bio. We don't even, right? We're dead. We don't even need to look at the picture. We've passed. And why I love the conversation that we plan on having today is that, Amber really works with amazing, we talked about, amazing women leaders. But the work that we're talking about today, which is the blueprints, and Amber is going to fully go for it, is for all humans. Men, women, non-binary folk. This conversation is for everyone and can completely transform everyone's lives. So I'm so excited to have her on and speak to this really important, really amazing conversation. Again, I can just blow her up. So let's just fucking get to it. Hi, Amber. I'm so excited to have you.
Hi, Erica. My head is as big as a blimp right now.
Good. I'm fly away. Fucking fly away. You deserve to.
You just gassed me up and now I'm taking it off this space.
That's what I love to do. I'm obsessed with your work, and people that, they'll stalk you and they'll see all the amazing things that you do. But like we just said, the blueprints are just incredible. They're just incredible. And I know we talked about this on our pre-call, but I love that this conversation is becoming more normalized, and I'm sure you'll talk about this. Now everyone should go check it out. There's a show on Netflix called Sex, Love, and Goop, and it's just, we have so much to discuss, but I'm so glad this is normalized, and I want to just so let's just start with the basics. If someone's what the fuck are the erotic blueprints? Tell us, what are the blueprints? What is that?
Yeah. Well, the erotic blueprints are a body of work that obviously I'm certified in. And even before I got certified, I was really obsessed with it. My mentor, Jaya, and her partner, Ian, are the ones who created this system. And essentially, the way that I love to describe it is because a lot of people are familiar with the 5 love languages, which is how you give and receive love typically. And this is no different, except it's for your eroticism of how you typically tend to be erotically wired. So it's kind of a roadmap that gives you information about yourself erotically of here's what turns me on, here's what turns me off. This is how I tend to receive eroticism and pleasure. And this is typically also how I tend to give it, which may or may not actually be how your partner or lovers want to receive their eroticism. So it's really information about how you're erotically wired, what turns you on, what turns you off, what are the shadow sides of your eroticism. And it just gives you information about yourself that when you know yourself erotically, you can own it. It gives you power, you can claim it. And that, as we know, ripples out into every area of your life. So it's really just figuring out what your type is, how you're wired, because when you know that, you know how to start pleasuring yourself, fulfilling yourself, and also your lovers as well.
Oh, that's so good. We'll talk about this, but it's really wild, right? It's its own language, and we'll go to Sex, Love, and Goop, that's easy. We could see it, it's so interesting that we could be having 2 different conversations. And it's of course, sometimes we're what's that? We could talk about that, but there's a mismatch of we're having 2 different conversations, and that brings a lot of frustration and shame and all the things, all the things. So I'm sure you see that a lot. Like you said, like mismatch partnership, mismatch types and all that. Yeah. What's that? Like, I have so many questions, but I guess my first thing is like, what is it like to watch someone discover what they are and how they embody? Like, what does that evolution look like for you when you're holding someone?
Yeah, it's really powerful. And first, I just want to say that there's 5 erotic blueprint types, and the types are made up of different components. So it goes deeper than just like, what is your erotic blueprint? There's also a lot that goes into it in terms of like what could affect your sexuality, things like chemistry, hormones, trauma, shame, the stage or the state that you're in. Like if you are healing from something, or if you're more in a curious stage of your sexuality, if you're really adventurous, if you're using your sexuality as more of like a transformational tool of like sex magic and using it to create things and just different things that go into it. But there is the energetic, the sensual, the sexual, the kinky, and the shapeshifter. So the first erotic blueprint type is the energetic, and energetics are very turned on by tease, by stillness, by space, by anticipation and longing. They love yearning. They like very feather light type of touch, or even completely off the body touch. So for an energetic, typically they'll get the thing I find most, especially because I work with vulva bodied people and those who typically have pussies, they find that, and this is true for any energetic, it's not just about the genitals, but will get turned off if someone comes into your space too quickly, or if you find that you get turned off the second your lover takes their clothes off, because it feels like it's too much too soon and you're not ready. That's typically energetic. So they like energy play, breath work, eye contact from across the room, space, stillness. The sensual loves having all of their 5 senses ignited and like titillated. So things like candles and different textures and flavors, very close, hugging, contoured body touch, more firm touch, or touch with different impact items that create like different sensations. So like rubbing like faux or real fur, or using different like silk or satin, or different things that bring like a really good texture to the skin and ignite the senses. And for a sensual, their turn-offs are kind of like their shadows is like getting stuck in their head, or being worried about like bodily fluids getting on the sheets, or the coconut oil or the lube getting everywhere, or not feeling emotionally connected, or they're really like they need transition rituals from their everyday life to the erotic encounter. So having something that toggles them into a sexual state or a more erotic state, as opposed to like just coming home from work or whatever, being on Zoom all day working. And then we have the sexual, which is typically how we tend to, as society, view and see sex, is we all tend to think that we're sexual blueprint, but most of us are not. So we're just kind of conditioned into it. And and this also means that sexuals are not ones to be discounted, because a downside can be that because it is so mainstream, we tend to think that the sexual is shallow, but they're not, or shallow, but they're not. They're like very playful. And there's a lot of deliciousness that can come with being with a sexual partner. So they like all the typical kinds of things. So nudity, genitals, penetration of any kind. They're pretty much want to have guaranteed orgasm. They like certainty with orgasm, totally okay with just getting naked very fast. And yeah, sexuals can also be thought of as shallow, like I was saying, or they can tend to be with a partner who they don't understand, because their viewpoint of sex is genitals touching, penetration, orgasm. So sometimes they have the tendency to not understand an energetic, or because energetics can have whole body orgasmic experiences from not even being touched, like literally just energy moving through them. And sensuals can have orgasms from really like whole body, full body orgasmic experiences from something that's really gourmet and delicious, like a delicious meal, or, the way that their flowers are arranged, it can just bring them so much pleasure. So the sexual is typically like what we tend to think of. They like having that genital play and orgasm involved. And then we have the kinky blueprint, and kinky is broken down into more like sensation and impact, where they like the feeling of like the rope on their skin, or they like to be spanked or choked. It's like more of the sensational, tactile impact style play. And then we have psychological. And when we say kinky, we mean like anything that's taboo for you. So for some people, taboo is literally having like sexual encounters outside of their own bedroom. That could be taboo for them. It doesn't just have to equal like bondage and dominance and dominance and, you know, submission and sadism and all the things like BDSM. It doesn't have to include all the whips and chains and leather. It can. And for a lot of people it does, but it's anything that is like taboo for you that creates the turn on. So the psychological piece is more of like, oh, we really enjoy like power play or role play or different dynamics that are more like fantasy based and psychological based. And then we have the shapeshifter, which is really truly like the lover of all lovers when harnessed properly. Is they are well versed in all of these languages, and they require and typically need all of the blueprints to be fully satiated and fulfilled sexually. And they can often feel like they're too much. I'm a shapeshifter, so one of my, I guess, shadows, if you will, is feeling like I'm too much, not always understanding my eroticism, because if I like all these things, that means there's so many options. And which one do I start with today that's actually going to take me to the most optimal turn on? So the shapeshifter can be like the most ultimate lover when they fully harness their gifts, if you will.
Oh, it's so good. I'm obsessed with it because it feels like there's permission in room. You know what I mean? I know I talked about this on one of my episodes. It's like this culture just tells a story of like, there's one flavor, you know what I mean? Like there's one texture and you go in and you go out and bibbity boppity, but you know, so I love this, you know, because it's like this giving us, it's giving us a whole language and a whole world. And I love that each blueprint, it's like endless. You know what I mean? Like there's so many flavors and textures and permission in one blueprint. So you open it all up like, holy shit, you know, it's amazing. It's limitless. Which is like, whew, you know, like I need to take a breath for that because it's like, it's amazing, but it's like, holy shit, you know? My question, well, I have so many fucking questions, but okay, this is kind of, I was going to actually end with this, but I feel called to ask this now. Like, okay, I take the test, you know, so for the listeners, there's a quiz. Amber has a quiz and you could go, you know, take a quiz of what your blueprint is. What the fuck do you do with that information? Because I've told clients and friends and they're like, I'm the shapeshifter, I'm this. And it's like, yay, you know, or someone's listening to this episode and they're like, yay. And then it's like, what do I do? Like, it's like, sure, there's permission to like explore, but like, what would you suggest? You know, obviously working with a coach, someone like you, but like, what would you suggest would be like the next step to really expand? Like we're talking about like this language, if you will.
Well, the simple answer, and this is just the way that like Jaya and her team have it set up, is like now if you take the quiz, you have two options. You can take the paid quiz, which goes deeper and actually gives you like that information. I think it's like $17 or something. It might go up, so don't quote me on the price, but it's not very expensive. It's pretty accessible. Or you can take the free quiz and it just gives you your main primary blueprints, because I think the paid quiz gives you the breakdown in terms of percentages of what each of your blueprint is, because sometimes you'll have someone who's like really high and energetic and then like really low in shapeshifter, or like, and then their partner will be like opposite of what theirs is. So the percentages just kind of give you information. But ultimately, like once you know what your erotic blueprint is, especially just like your main blueprint, because oftentimes like the journey that I take my clients through is like, we're just going to work with your primary blueprint at first, and then we'll start expanding once you kind of like get yourself used to like feeding that blueprint, then we can move into the next. And there's a lot of different like intricate layers to it that come with it. But ultimately it's just like, okay, what is it about? There's tons of free information in terms of my world and Jaya's world of like what turns these blueprints on, what turns them off. And then you just start like, really, it's curiosity and exploration. And, you know, sometimes doing it alone can be frustrating because it's just like, well, what the F do I do? I don't know if I can cuss on here, but
right. No, oh my God, please.
Yeah.
Go for it.
What the fuck do I do? Like, how do I do energetic touch? Like, what is that like? So sometimes, yeah, having a guide is really important, but there are tons of resources out there between like, you know, Jaya's information, my information. You can get into a program. I have a program called Turn the Fuck On, where we go through all of it, but it's really just like curiosity of like, okay, if I know that energetics like space and tease and anticipation, how do I start cultivating that with myself? How do I start bringing it in with my lover or lovers, and just being willing to start the journey? Because I find that, so going back to like part of the erotic blueprint types is figuring out what is your stage or your state. So there's curious, which is usually like, I call them my sexy little students or my sexy little bookworms. They're like, I'm going to buy every book on sex. I'm going to watch everybody's YouTube channel, and RIP to my YouTube channel. Otherwise that would have been a resource for all of you, but it's gone. They deleted it. But they're like absorbing all of the content and all of the information, but they're not quite embodying and implementing and actually taking the actions to do it. So it's like, I'm going to watch which I've been there. I was there in the very, very, very beginning of my journey, like 6.5, 7 years ago, of like, I'm going to watch the video on how to, touch yourself this way, but I'm not actually going to touch myself this way. I'm just going to watch the video. And that's okay, because sometimes we just have to like get used to this even being something that we might actually do within ourselves, of like, I just need to like hype myself up as someone who's going to go on this journey. So that's the curious. And then we have the adventurous, who comes in and they're like going to sex parties and they're swinging and they're doing all these adventurous things, right? They're trying things, they're exploring, they're experimenting. We also have healing, which is any kind of healing. So it could be sexual healing. It could be healing from childbirth. It could be healing from an injury or an illness. It could be healing from anything, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, sexually, physically, any kind of illness. So typically when people are healing, they might not always be available for sexual encounters because they don't feel the greatest, or they're just in that space where they're coming back to a space of like healing themselves. And then we have resting, and sometimes resting and healing go together, because resting is just oftentimes one of the common ones I see. And I have clients who are in this predicament and starting to come out of it with our work, is like the woman client that I'm working with, because I do tend to focus on women, has like really wants to be having all kinds of sex, but her partner is not available. So it's like they're forced into a resting space. It's not chosen, because their partner is not available to connect in that way. So sometimes we choose the resting stage of like, I'm just going to be consciously celibate. I'm not going to have any sexual interactions with anybody else. I'm just going to focus on myself. Or because we're resting because we're healing something, or we're resting because we just want a break. Or the resting is not something that we chose, but it's because we were with a partner or partners who are just not available to explore in that time. And so we go into that space of like sexless relationships. And then the last stage is transformational, which is really taking your eroticism to a deeper level, a higher level, using it to do things like sex magic, where you channel your energy into creating a desire, where you are practicing maybe things like Tantra or Taoism. Like you're really transmuting that sexual energy from being just localized in the genitals and channeling it into something else, or directing it into money or your business, or just harnessing all that power and directing it for like spiritual transformation or self-actualization of like knowing yourself more and all the things. So knowing your stage or your state can also be super helpful, because we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves, but when we can also be like, okay, I'm an energetic, but I'm also healing because I just had a baby, then we have so much permission to just let ourselves heal. And we can recognize that, and then we can share that with our lover. Like, yeah, I'm resting, or I'm healing, or I'm just noticing that I'm really curious right now. I'm just absorbing all the information. So I think that's really important to know too, because sometimes we're just like super curious and we're just like absorbing all of the content, but we're not actually implementing things. So if you tend to listen to the episode and be like, well, I know what my blueprint is, but I'm just going to go get obsessed with the information, but then never do anything with it, that's kind of you can get stuck in the shadow side of all of these. It's just that you get stuck in it. You don't move out of resting. You don't move out of healing. Because there can always be more healing to do, especially sexually. It's like, well, I'm not fully sexually healed, so I need to heal more. Or, it's like, there's so many ways we can hold ourselves back of like, I've got to heal all my love wounds before I can have love. Got to heal all my money blocks before I can make money. It's like, no, you don't.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's so funny. I just did an episode on like seasons, and you're kind of, it sounds like in the same slew of it. It's like, and we feel really shitty or shamed if we're like, like I should be in summer season, which is orgasms and produce, and I'm in winter right now. You know what I mean? Like, so I love that you just touched on that. Like, be curious of like what your blueprint is and play, but like honor also where you're at,
Yeah. It's seasons and cycles, and it gives us permission to just be how we are and accept it. And it's just freedom and permission.
Yes. Yes. So I fucking love that you voiced that. So thank you. Because I don't want people to be like, now I have to go to Barnes and Noble and buy 77 books on Tantra. Like, if you want to, God bless. Can't wait to hear about it. You know what I mean? Like, tell me all the things. Like, it's great, but I love that you voiced this so we can kind of be mindful of like, great, like, let's implement this and also nourish where you're at in a gentle way, I guess. We could say the word would be gentle. Like, how would you suggest someone like to create their own like pleasure practice? So if someone's like, okay, I'm so interested, but I'm so new, Amber, like, what the fuck do I do? Like, would you suggest like, okay, so-and-so, like, create your own pleasure practice, and if you have a partner, create one with them? Like, would you suggest that for someone totally brand new to this work?
I would, from a very like light perspective of, like, there's no way you can fuck it up. There's no way you can do this wrong. Like, we always say in the erotic blueprints that everything is just feedback and information, including when you try things out with your lover. So if you try something and it just doesn't feel that great in your body, it's like, okay, doesn't mean you suck and you don't know what you're doing and you're bad or wrong. Like, your brain's going to make all these stories, but that doesn't mean that's what's happening. It's literally just feedback and information. Like, okay, I tried to spank myself with a spoon and I noticed that, like, I didn't really feel that great. So, okay, just feedback and information. What would happen? And like, I would say, come at it from a perspective of like curiosity, of like wanting to get to know yourself, and like almost a little like playful, naughty energy of like, I wonder what turns me on. So, I always tell my clients, like, let's look around the house and see, can we look for innocent household items that we can pervert and make and turn into like pleasurable things? So it doesn't mean you have to go out and buy a bunch of sex toys either, because we use all kinds of things. I have like a vase of roses in front of me, and roses are one of my favorite erotic tools. You can take any item. You could take a pen and you could use this in every single blueprint. So I could give you a little demo if you want.
Please. Oh my God, I'm obsessed. I'm like, tell me everything.
So, all right, let's play with the pen. So this is like a weird thing that I know about myself, and I know it because I've tried weird things. So it's like, if you're ever trying something and you're like, this is weird, also know that it can end up being the one thing that you really like, and that's okay. But I know about me that my third eye, which is, the area between your eyebrows and your forehead, is a very powerful, like, and I feel a lot of energy there. So you can take something. I also use, like, I have a child and she's 3 now, and we have one of those like booger sucker things. It looks like a turkey baster. We haven't used it in years, but now I use it to actually blow air on my third eye, and it feels really good. So I've even used that for different things, like blowing air on the top of my head. So you can take something as simple as like a pen, and using it energetically could be like, okay, you start really far away from your head, maybe like a foot away, and just seeing if you feel anything, and just slowly, like, maybe pulsing it. You can have it tipped down. Okay, I noticed that when I put it tipped down, that feels different than if it's like laying flat. And you can do this with your hand, but just bringing it closer and closer to your body part, bringing it closer and closer to your scalp, and just paying attention. Do you feel anything? I can feel almost like a compression of energy as I'm getting closer and closer. Ooh, and then I felt a little jolt when I touched. So I also like to just hold things in front of my third eye. Sometimes I'll pulse. So you can use any item to hold or hover, or, just using a pen in this example. I don't have the ink out. So I'm just gonna very gently drag the tip of the pen very gently, like you're just touching the top layer of skin or the hairs on your arms. But you can just very gently feather light strokes. You can do this in the palm of your hand. So that would be like energetic play with an item. And then sensual could be like wrapping my hand around it and really like stroking the length of the pen and feeling the, like, I don't know, weird textured grippy thingy. Even writing on paper with it and just being like, ooh, look at this smooth ink, or kind of like caressing it against the curves of my body, like feeling the way that the pen is sandwiched in between my elbow, like that inner elbow, and just feeling things. And then obviously like kinky, you can, kind of like scratch yourself with it a little bit. You can spank yourself with it. Or to psychologically play with it, you could imagine all the naughty things you're going to do with this pen, or that your lover might do to your body with the pen, if it's more of the power and the fantasy of it that does it for you. And then, yeah, like shapeshifter could just play with all of it and just see what, and then sexual, you could, I wouldn't say insert this into yourself, but you could stroke your nipples with it. You could stroke your genitals with it. You could just place it near your genitals and see what happens. But like, there's just kind of ways to play with any item in the blueprint. It's like just exploration and fun. And sometimes it's the fun that helps open you up to like, oh, I could try this, or like, I wonder what I could do with that.
Yeah, I have like so much to fucking say. This is so good. It just takes away so much shame. And it just gives so much permission. I love, first of all, when I was watching you do I was like, like this is like ASMR. Like you watching you do, I was like, I'm deeply relaxed. Like watching you do so I think I'm energetic. So I have a strong energy. So watching you, I was like, I am hypnotized, and it's so interesting because someone else might be like, oh, I want to watch this part, or it's so interesting. But I love this because while you're talking, I was getting emotional because I know some of my listeners are going to be like, I am dying to have these conversations and I never have. And I really want to go deeper, and it just takes away the shame. And I love that you have like a childlike curiosity on top. So it like doesn't feel like, I mean, we have to like fucking decondition like dirty and all that. Like that's for a whole other day, like we have to decondition that. But I love that you approached it in such an innocent, like playful, like, ooh, like it's like, I'm just going to play. Like I'm going to see it. If I don't like it, cool. If I like it, oh my God, great. This is great information. Like I love that that's a really welcoming way to people that may have never done this before. Like you said, it doesn't have to be like, now you go to a dungeon. Like if you want to, I'm thrilled for you. But like, you know what I mean? Like you're like, tell me everything. But like, it's not like now I go to a dungeon and I have to wear all leather. Like, no, you can go in with a very like playful, like, I'm just going to see, like, I'm just going to know my body more. And so I love that you gave something as simple as a pen example. It just takes away so much conditioning. You know what I mean? It's just like, no, I'm just going to fucking explore. Like, it doesn't have to be this. So I really, really love that. And this is like a little bit of a sidebar to this conversation, but I think why I love you so much and your work so much is you are very in integrity with the pleasure thing. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like, and no one's perfect, but it seems like you really fucking fight for your pleasure. And I love it because I'm like, at least on like the Instagram journey, I'm like, she's doing some of the more traditional things, like we're both wearing red lipstick, but red lipstick. But then I love that, you're like, I'm taking my daughter for a walk, or I made pumpkin pie. Like, I'm like, I love that you, like, it just feels like A, you fight for your pleasure, but B, it's not one shade. And there's no shame for anyone that's one shade, but I'm like, this is such a good leader of this work, because from one moment in the morning she might be doing sex magic, and later that day her and her daughter are baking pumpkin pie. And I just want to like bow to you, celebrate you, like that you're the richness that you're cultivating. Like, it makes sense you do blueprint work because you're so well versed in this language. Like, can you talk to us about like your pleasure journey? Like how I fight for it sounds so fucking aggressive, but I guess like how you prioritize it, like how do you keep coming back to it? You are an entrepreneur, you're a mom, you're all the things. How do you do it?
Yeah, I was really hoping you'd ask something like that, because I really wanted to elaborate that on like, and I can feel myself getting emotional. So if I start crying, like, and this is the thing that I wanted to say is like, I can find so much joy in making pumpkin pie or taking a walk. And like, even the other day, I think I wrote a post somewhere talking about how like I went to the grocery store the other day by myself. I think it was like the night before Halloween, because I needed to get my daughter some more pull-ups. And I was just like, oh my God, like even emotional in the car driving, because this is what happens when you're so connected to your pleasure. And this is what the erotic does, is the erotic is not just about sex. It is about aliveness. It is like life force energy. And when you can drive down the road and like see, like, it's fall where I live. So I'm seeing the dark clouds and the pumpkins in the fields. I'm seeing the trees changing. And I was like listening to, I don't know, some master class of somebody or something, just listening to something for like, the vibes. And I was just like, I feel so alive. Like I would have never felt so turned on and alive. And I don't mean like turned on as in I wanted to have sex in that moment, but I mean alive, like so much energy moving through me of like, and yeah, there was some like around this time of the year, I do fall into archetypes that are like a little naughty and seductress and like kind of like kinky, playful energy of like, ooh, I'm like out and it's like the dark clouds and the Halloween energy at the time that I was, driving. It was before Halloween. Obviously, we're past that now, but it was like that energy I was in. And it was like, I just feel so alive that I can go to the grocery store and have the greatest fucking time because I just feel I can find pleasure in everything because the wind, the music, the feeling and the energy. So I am a very dark energetic and psychological kink shapeshifter, and dark energetic and light energetic. There's two different versions of the energetic. So there's the dark energetic, which is very like the way I like to describe it, that it feels for me is like very like sultry and deep and dark and like penetration kind of energy, like almost like healthy stalkerish predatory energy, not like the, twisted messed up kind, but like you're like a panther stalking your prey or like you're being stalked. Like it just feels really delicious. And then light energetic to me is more of like, it's higher up in my body. It feels like very light. I feel my heart is opened. It just feels like really like beautiful and like angels singing kind of energy, which I don't go into as much anymore. I definitely am more of a dark energetic. But the point of me saying that is because this time of the year, I do feel very alive because there is that dark energy starting to descend in, and I resonate with that. So simple things like going outside and taking a walk at night, in a safe area in my neighborhood it feeds me. It makes me feel so alive. And like that is part of my pleasure practice. So for me, and sometimes it has felt like I've had to fight for my pleasure. And it's mostly just coming from that part of me that is, because I live with my partner. We've been together for 6 years. We have a 3-year-old child. So there have been times where I'm like, I have to fight for my pleasure because like, and I'm a very greedy pleasure whore. Like I love being in pleasure. It might be my shapeshifter nature. It might just be me. I don't know, but I could spend hours and hours and hours in pleasure, and not just sexual pleasure, but like this is why my whole day is like, how can I make this pleasurable? So while I'm sitting here with you, I've got like my red sheepskin that I'm sitting on. I've got my cozy, the future is orgasmic sweater on because it feels nice. I've got my roses in front of me. I sprayed my freak ritual spray. I can see out into my yard. Like all of this is bringing me pleasure because I'm in an environment that just turns me on and makes me feel good and is pleasing to look at. And I advocate for my pleasure because I know what it does for me. And I know how it feeds me. And when I'm not pleasured, especially deeply fulfilled pleasure, and when pleasure is not a part of my day, I start to feel dry. I start to feel like I'm a flower withering, like the difference between a rose that is like fully blossomed open and a rose that's just like, you can tell it hasn't been watered. It hasn't been out in the sun. Like that's what pleasure and eroticism is to me, is it's literally our life force. Like if we are not connected to that energy, you stagnate, and stagnation equals death. And it might not actually mean like your literal death, but like a lot of my clients come to me and they're like, I feel like I'm dead inside. I feel like my eroticism is on life support. I feel like I'm just stuck and I don't know what to do. And it's because they're not moving that energy. They're not prioritizing it. They're not connected. There's not a lot of pleasure in their day. So yeah, I'm a pleasure whore, and I've had to, shift my relationship to pleasure now that I am a mother and I don't have as much time to myself than I did when I was living in my little cottage several years ago by myself, literally spending hours and hours and hours in erotic ritual, like doing breast massage and breath work and different kinds of dance and de-armoring with wands and jade egg and all the things I was doing. Now it's like, I know when to fit it in, and I know how to bring pleasure in, whether it's taking a bath is pleasurable. It's a different kind of pleasure than, for example, being tied up and spanked. And it's a different kind of pleasure to make pumpkin pie or take a walk with my daughter than it is to have my lover, rubbing my body down with oil, or for me to be, doing breath work that's very activating. So my journey with pleasure has just been like becoming super fierce about my boundaries and my commitment to pleasure, because I know how far it takes me and I know what happens when I'm not in pleasure. And no one in my life benefits from me not being pleasured. They're like, please go like do something about this because I turn bitchy, I turn mean, I get resentful, and no one wants to be around me when I'm in that space. I don't even want to be around me when I'm in that space.
Right. I'm so glad you fucking said that, because I think part of the like, it sounds cool, right? Like everyone's like, oh, I want to do the pleasure thing. I want to do the pleasure thing. But then they're like, and that's why I always make like fights for, like you fight for pleasure, but like fights for it. I'm like, no, it's good for your health and it's good for, so I'm so glad that you like explained, like, it's not this like frivolous, stupid thing. It's like, it changes your life. It sounds like it changes your daughter's life, your partner's life. Like it's not just like this frivolous, stupid thing. Like I'm going to walk around in my house in a boa. Like it's this like deep, which we can, but like,
yeah,
it's
you
this,
can.
like, yeah, I'm about it. But like, it's like this deep, integrous practice. And I fucking love that you voiced that. And I got emotional too, because I think, again, there's a million reasons why I love you, but I think one of the reasons why is because I had a story for many years around motherhood that I'm like, ew, I never would want to be a mom. Because I grew up in suburbia and I saw a lot of crunchy moms. I mean, my mom's the best, so like, she's off the table. But I got like, again, great, like, there probably are great women, but I just saw the light die within them. And so I was like, I never want to do that. And so for you, like someone like you, someone like Crystal Langan, like all these moms in this in the community that we're in, I'm like, they're I was laughing. Crystal said in a video the other day, like, I'm driving my minivan and I'm in pleasure, and I'm like, oh my god, you know what I mean? But it gave me like, I was like, that could happen, like, and I think I saw two stories. It's one, you're in the minivan and you're crunchy as all hell. Or you're in the Mercedes and, pussy juice is flying through the windshield. You know what I mean? Like, I never knew that there could be a middle. Like, so for you guys to be like, no, like, it's a practice. But the fact that you guys are cultivating that, I think has been really deeply healing for me. And I'm sure will be deeply healing for people, people that want to be parents, or, it's parenthood or this or that. Like, you're making it, I don't know, it just gave me really deep permission to like actually think about this thing. Because before I was like, no, I'm scared that I'm going to lose my life essentially if I do this. And so you are just such a fucking phenomenal model on this.
Thank you. That just brought tears to my eyes, because I remember when I got pregnant and I was just like, I was obviously already super devoted to pleasure when I got pregnant, already a sex coach for several years, but I felt that part of me start to come in that was looking around for the women and being like, but where are they? Like, am I going to be able to do this? Or am I going to all of a sudden turn into like, love my mom, but am I going to turn into that? Am I going to turn into all the women in my lineage who pleasure was never really part of it? And I had to like really decide, how am I going to respond to pregnancy? How am I going to respond to birth? How am I going to respond to motherhood? And I just chose to be like, okay, I'm going to use my same tools and apply them to pregnancy and birth. And, I believe that, there are a lot of circumstances that led to this, including many different layers and levels of privileges and access to certain things. But I went fucking hard on using the same tools that I trained myself in to have orgasms. And I used those to prepare myself to open my body up to birth energy, because it's the same energy. And I had a really ecstatic orgasmic birth. Like, my water broke on Andy's hand over the toilet because he was stroking my pussy while I was in labor. Like, I was just so like, okay, I'm just going to go all in on this pleasure thing because I do not want to lose myself. And I did several rituals for myself, kind of like transitioning myself, because that was also something that was lost on me, of like, there's no one in my family that's gonna, you have the baby shower, but that's more about the baby and more about people buying cute baby things. But it's not about the woman transitioning from single, like just in her own erotic self, to now being the erotic mother and having that. And I did several rituals for myself about that, of like, I'm going from maiden to mother, but not just mother, erotic mother. And made sure that after I had Scarlett, I was lucky enough to have a doula, a postpartum doula. She would come take care of me. I would have her draw me a bath. She would light all my candles. And I just got, from the moment that Scarlett was born, and even the way that she was birthed, was downstairs in my tub with red candles lit. And I was, looking at this picture of a rose with a baby's head coming out of it. And like, my birthing experience was very much just like, if you could know me and be like, that's how you gave birth, that's a very Amber way to give birth, that makes sense that you gave birth that way. And it also makes sense that you went through like the initial postpartum period this way, because it was very much like devotion to pleasure, like people taking care of me, really having to take up space. And there was a lot of mom guilt. And sometimes there still even is now, of her being 3 years old. And like, I have a pretty full but relaxed work schedule. And, there are times where I'm like, okay, I'm going to self-pleasure, and then I'll go pick her up from child. She's with my sister now. We're in the process of hiring a nanny that will come work here and watch her at our house. But it's like, that'll be a whole new edge for me of like, there's a nanny upstairs with my kid, and now I want to self-pleasure. So how do I not, collapse into guilt and just be like, well, I could send her home and just hang out with Scarlett, or I could still stay downstairs, have my bath, do a quick self-pleasure, and like be with myself for a bit because I'm paying her for that time. But just because we're like in the house doesn't mean that I should sacrifice my alone time.
Yes. Yes, that's huge. And that's seeing that being modeled. I mean, that's not it sounds almost like you said, you've been doing this work for so long, but it almost to me sounds like the birth is a new initiation.
Mm-hmm. Every day is a new initiation. If you have another kid, that would be a whole nother thing, which I'm not going to have another child. But if I did, it would just be like, oh, now I've got two people demanding of my body. And how do I still prioritize pleasure for myself? It's like, there's always going to be another edge in our lives of like, that we could use as an excuse of like, well, now I've got two kids, or, I've got X amount on my plate, or I've got more clients, or I'm single, or now I'm in a relationship. It's like, no, we've always got to be devoted to our own eroticism and pleasure, no matter what.
Yes, this makes me so thrilled. Again, I think it's deeply healing, whether it's motherhood, fatherhood, parenthood, even just like taking on projects or work. Like, it doesn't matter. But it's an initiation of sorts. And I'm so grateful that, like, this is my own personal thing, but I'm so grateful it was modeled to me, and I'm so grateful we have this community, like Regina Thomas Shower, where I was like, oh, this person's a mom? That's fucking cool. Like, I guess I like, oh, okay. Like, okay, cool. Like, she wrote a book on pussy and she has, okay, cool. Like, I don't have to be this version of a mom. So I just wanted to celebrate you on that, because I think that's huge. And something that also is coming up for me, I think that's important is, again, we talked about shame, like that's a big one. And, it's like, oh, I'm resistant to my pleasure. I'm resistant to doing this work. But another reason why I love what you do is it's so enchanting. It's so magical. But I'm like, what does Amber have on the Instagram today? Like, I'm like, what spells? Like, so it's like the best content fucking ever. But my question is like, can you voice? Because I think we kind of feel the same way on this. Like, how you merge, or how your spiritual practice is your sexual practice, vice versa. Because I see clients. I actually saw a client yesterday, and they were saying, like, it was always merged for me, but through shame and trauma, it kind of got ripped apart, and they feel like their sexual and spiritual practices are, compartmentalized. I'm like, that's okay. Like, we can merge it back together. Can we talk about that? Because I think it would give people deep permission to be like, oh shit, this is something that could actually be holy, and it's not like gross and in a separate box. Like, I know that's a bomb of a question, but whatever comes up for you around that.
Yeah, it's a bomb that I'm willing to take on, because I love the conversation, because it's been a personal journey for me. Is like, and when we say like spirituality, like fit in whatever, because I have tons of clients who were raised very religious, like whether it was Catholic or Christian. I have clients who weren't, but still have, like, we all still have that conditioning of like, you're being watched and it's sinful and it's bad and you shouldn't do it. And like, so many things that reinforce those stories that we don't even need to go in, because we know that they're there and we know that we can feel them. But for me, it's like, my erotic practice is my spiritual practice, and it like gets to be alive for me. So sometimes like I'm working with like goddess energy. Sometimes it's God energy. Like, it's really just for me what needs healing inside of myself. It's like, I feel like this year has actually been a lot about like the energy of God, especially because I've noticed like surrendering more in my life, surrendering more in pleasure, learning to trust that I'm taken care of, learning to trust that like it's okay to open and receive and be in this much pleasure, and I'm going to be loved and I'm going to be taken care of, and I'm not going to be like, struck down by the holy hand of God. So for me, a lot of the times my clients and I are doing work to merge and integrate, I love hosting holy horror rituals for my clients, because a lot of the times the clients that come to me are, they're very much into like, they have all these desires that feel really wrong and bad, but also so right in the same sense of like, I want this, but I feel like this is bad and wrong. I feel like I'm disconnected from my own divinity and from the divine outside of me, whatever that means. And like, it's really just a lot of disconnection that's come through of like us not remembering how holy and divine we are. And the fact that our eroticism is part of that. And the biggest piece for me was like, growing up and like, my parents making me go to church with my uncle who was Christian. And the main messaging was that God was this white old man who lived in the sky that created us. And at the same time, hated certain things about us that he created in us. So the very thing that is actually feels the best for us and is the most powerful in us, God actually hates, which is our eroticism. So it's like, this thing that, we're all meant to procreate. Like we literally, in order as a species for us to have children, there's some element of procreation, no matter how it happens. And yet it's demonized. It's, frowned upon. It's not holy. It's unholy. Yet here we are. And this is what we do to create other life. So it was just, for me, it was really hard to reconcile this idea that there was some, sterile man in the sky who hated like the most primal part of us. Like, why? It didn't make any sense to me. And so it created a lot of confusion for me of like, I have these urges, I have these desires. I had my first orgasm at age 2 and it felt very ecstatic for me. I didn't have words for it at the time, but now I know that that's what it was. And yet I felt like I'm doing something wrong. I'm bad. I'm dirty. Like I'm not loved because of this. Like bad things are going to happen to me because of this. And it just, it created a huge divide. So the work of the erotic is really about reclaiming yourself as holy, reclaiming yourself as lovable, reclaiming yourself as worthy, reclaiming yourself as enough, reclaiming yourself as like God, goddess, whatever, royalty, divine royalty embodied. Like literally, it's just like we merge the primal, the erotic with the spiritual and with the holy. And for me and my clients, a lot of the times it's going really deep into those like greedy, raw, lustful, like, swinging into that territory to fully reclaim it and see that as holy too. Because, we could go into all the shadow pieces of all that because that's my jam too. But it's like, the more you try to repress the energy that creates, like you just can't. You cannot repress that which creates. It's just like literal law. You cannot repress the energy that created you and that created me and that created everybody and that will create more, because it's the energy of creation. It's not meant to be repressed. It will seek a way out every time. And if we try to repress it, it's not going to go away. It's just going to pop out in some other area of your life and wreak havoc.
That is so good. And what I was thinking is, I think you also have I think we kind of have a similar path. Like it sounds like in the beginning of your practice, it was more like love and light. Like we still have love and light, but like more like love and light and namaste, and I think it's funny. I was like, oh, I relate to you because we both had that like transition. And I don't know about you, but I know for me, like, I was fucking psyched when I got my hands on that work. I was like going to the yoga classes and drinking the green juices, and there's still space for it. Like I still love that stuff, but like I was psyched, but it wasn't until I did this work until I got it. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I do love everyone and love and light and namaste, but it wasn't until like, whoa, I'm going to do this deeply embodied work that I could tell myself I'm worthy on repeat, but it wasn't until I did the erotic work that I'm like, I deeply feel connected to my divinity. I deeply feel worthy and loved and valuable. So it's so funny that like this work is so demonized when it's like, it's such a gift, it's so demonized and it's so shadowed, like we put so much shit on it. And in actuality, it's such a fucking gift to so many people, to all of us. So it's so fascinating so I'm sure that resonates, right? That like, that it landed once you started doing this work.
Yeah, I totally started out like for me, the beginning of my sexual healing journey, and just even like thinking back to like before the sexual journey of like, I was obsessed with like yoga and green juicing and like all the things. I started out as a holistic health coach and then realized, oh, I've got some really messed up sexual things happening. Why do I keep attracting partners who have like secret porn addictions and keep cheating on me? And like, why am I peeing my pants at 22 years old, way before I even have a child? Like why do I have so much shame and insecurity? And yeah, it was like totally got into the scene, and it was like Tantra and Taoism, which I love again, but it's so like, it's actually not like it is supposed to be yin and yang and dark and light, but the way that it's often taught is very much focused on like, trying to ascend and enlighten yourself. But until you can descend down into the parts of yourself that you fear the most, your love and light means nothing to me if you cannot go down into your darkest depths and you can accept and love. And like in my world, we give everything red hot erotic approval. We're like, oh, this part is just like so sexy and so cute. And I just love it so much. And it's so hot. And like, because it transmutes, erotic energy transmutes things so fast. So there's a difference between like, oh, I accept myself, and being like, oh, I just like accept myself and I love myself. And I'm so hot when I do that thing I always do. Like I can feel a difference in my system very fast between at which I release power from that situation. And the reason why our sexuality is so demonized is because it's our power. And if we are in our power, we are sovereign, we are in control of our own selves, and we cannot be controlled by others. So in order to control us, we have to be disconnected from our divinity and our eroticism. Because if we don't see ourselves as divine and we don't see ourselves as powerful, then we will constantly look to the main divine that has been given to us, which, and is different depending on religion. And we will also disconnect from that very energy that makes us the most powerful.
Like, hi, what? Mic drop. Like, casual, just dropping some bombs. I'm so sad because I know that like everyone on a podcast, like I could talk to you for 45 hours, but like I genuinely, like I hate when people say that to me at the end of, I'm like, haha, thanks, but I could actually like, I'm like, there's so much, and today I was like, oh, we're just going to talk about the blueprints, but like, I truly can't with you, because I'm like, I want to talk about the seductress and money, like there's still 4,000 other conversations that need to be had, because you do it, you know what I mean? Like, you actually do the work, you're not just like, hi everyone, I'm a sex coach, like you do the damn thing, and I love your flavor, you have like so much to fucking offer people, it's like I'm so glad I found you. Like, hallelujah. Like, and I'm so glad we're in the same circles. I'm like, thank God. Thank God. Before we wrap, obviously, I want everyone to know about you and where to find you. But before we do, I know we kind of briefly talked about this, but this has been such a fucking bomb of a conversation. We talked blueprints, we talked spirituality, we talked shame, we talked motherhood, like all the things, like very much in my nature. I can't stick to one topic, but like, is there anything that you would like to frame or voice or digest or even like give to I know this is again, a huge question, but like if I was a listener and I'm like, what do I do with this? Like, do you have any advice or insight of like, okay, sexuality is sacred, I could do these blueprints quiz, like what now? Like, what would you invite the next step to be for these amazing people?
I would say like there's kind of two parts. So one is like, I know that this is a big conversation. So if you need to listen to this episode multiple times, do that. But if like, just focus on the one thing that you're taking away and then follow the thread of that. So if you're like, ooh, I'm going to take the quiz, like, that's great. Follow that. If you're like, there was something in here about spirituality that landed for me, or motherhood or parenthood, or like, what's that one little nugget that you got out of this? And can you just see where that takes you, so that there's no pressure to be like, I need to remember everything they said. Like, no, that's not realistic. I would rather you take one thing and actually start practicing it and embodying it than just all go intellectual and then just disappear the next day. And you'd be like, contact me on Instagram a year later and be like, oh, I listened to you a year ago and then I just did nothing about it. Like, no. So I'd say that. And then the second one is like, if you resonate with me, just follow me on Instagram, come into my Facebook group, like just surround yourself by people who are embodying the things that you want to embody in the way that you want to. So if I didn't resonate, there's tons of other sexual educators, erotic blueprint coaches, all kinds of people that you can follow. And I can help, direct you too. If you're just like, you're not my, I always say, I'm not everybody's cup of tea or glass of Pinot Noir. So if I'm not, like, I can hook you up with somebody who is, or, you can follow me and see who else I'm following or whatever. But it's really just like, for me, the difference is like immersing myself in a community of people who are having the conversations, because then the conversation becomes norm and it becomes the new standard. It becomes normalized. And the big thing that happens a lot of times with my clients is they come to me because I'm partly triggering them and partly showing them something that they know is inside of them too, obviously. And they're like, I don't know what it is about you, but I just need to be in your energy. And so we start working together, and they're like, the things you're saying are landing intellectually, but they're not there yet. And then they start doing the practices and they're like, oh my gosh, like this feels like viscerally real in my body now. It's not just in my head. It's actually like, it's who I am now. It's just how I be and who I be and who I am and how I do things. Like things just start clicking and landing. And it's through being in containers, whether it's free or paid or both, where those conversations are regularly happening, especially because if you have a lot of shame and trauma, it's really important to be in containers where those conversations are taking place so that you can slowly start to shed the layers of those things and start awakening to your actual erotic truth, not the conditioned version of yourself that you think yourself to be.
Oh, thank you. That's really fucking tangible and like doable advice. It's not like now go, like, it's like, okay, we can all do that. And I invite everyone to do, in a way that feels nourishing to them. Like, okay, let's get into communities. Like you said, let's just start by adding people on Instagram and this and that. So with that being said, I want everyone to have access to you because you are fucking phenomenal. Again, I could pimp you out more.
It's true.
It is true. So that's why I'm like, tell us all the ways we can find you. Tell if there's a particular program you're set, whatever you want to pitch, like this is the floor because everyone needs to know about all of your amazing work.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. I'm just like, where do I even start? I mean, obviously the simplest place to start is just my website, amberleitz.com. I have the quiz on there for the erotic blueprints, and you will be properly routed back to me as a coach. So if you are wanting to work with me, like, that's great. In terms of like, I have a free community. It's called Rich Hot Erotic Leadership. So I'm really consider myself like a sex coach for women leaders right now. Like, while we're helping you work on money and business and up leveling, we're also going to talk like you're going to just have more orgasms and connect to your eroticism, because that's no matter what I'm talking about, it's always through the lens of eroticism, pleasure, orgasm, sensuality. Like that's just forever will be my flavor. So you can join that free community. Obviously follow me on Instagram. And in terms of like offerings, I have one space open because I just sold, I brag, my coaching spot in my courtesan's lineage, because I only take a very, very, very limited, like 1, 2, 3 clients at a time in my one-on-one. So I have the one woman in courtesan's lineage, and I have one spot open now. It is quite an investment. It's $4,000 a month, but it's for a very specific type of woman person who wants to come in and work with, up leveling money, sex, power, that kind of energy, and doing all of it through the lens of eroticism and pleasure and sensuality. So I have that going on. And then I will have my Rich Hot Erotic Leadership Mastermind open, which is for women leaders who want to step into the energy of leadership while being, embodied in their eroticism, working less, being in pleasure more, doing it in a way that actually comes from who they're being, and being in pleasure and being in rest more, and like being turned on and fully expressed as a leader, and really stepping into like that powerful leader that knows she can hold people and is here to do like amazing, legendary, luxurious, outrageous things, but is just like, I'm so overdoing it alone. So we will have limited spaces in that. I don't know when this is coming out, but I think typically I'm taking 9 women. So if someone wants to get into that, you can see me talking about it all over Instagram and Facebook and all the things. So
what's your Insta handle?
Just Amber Leitz.
Perfect. Thank you. Just wanted, because I want to make sure everyone gets to you.
Yeah. Funnel them to me.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, come on, everyone, go stalk her.
I'm an exhibitionist, so I love being seen. Come voyeur and then throw your money at me, and I will, we'll together rock your world, seduce out all those desires, and just have a lot of, permission giving fun with pens and roses and whatever else you can find around your house to pervert in the best way.
I'm obsessed, and I'm obsessed with you, truly. And again, not to be basic B, but we could talk for 40 hours. Like, you are the best. Thank you. Seriously. Thank you for coming on. And I'm sure I would love to have you again and just have so many more conversations, because you're the real fucking deal. So thank you.
Thank you. Such a pleasure.
thank you. Seriously, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode and on this podcast journey. And if you loved what we talked about today and you know another human who could definitely benefit from what was discussed, I would so appreciate if you would go ahead and share this podcast with them. Don't forget, hit subscribe or follow so you never ever miss an episode. And the great news is you can always follow me, my work, my blog, my podcast on my website at www.wethelight.org. And hey, remember, life is so much brighter when we shine. I'll see you next time.